The ceasefire expires Wednesday, and as of this morning, Iran has officially said it will not send negotiators to Pakistan for round 2. Vance flew to Islamabad anyway. The table is set. One side showed up, the other didn't. And somewhere in Beijing, the most powerful actor in this entire war said absolutely nothing. Not a word about the Iranian cargo ship America seized on Sunday. Not a call pressing Iran back to the talks. Not a single statement. And I want to spend the next several minutes explaining why that silence, China's complete and deliberate nothing, is doing more work in this negotiation right now than anything Washington or Tehran has said out loud. But first, I need to tell you something the coverage is getting completely wrong about Iran's refusal, because if you don't understand what Iran is actually doing, you cannot understand why China's silence matters. Here is what most people watching this conflict don't know. Iran did not just walk away from nothing. Iran walked away from 21 hours of the highest level direct US-Iran talks since 1979. 21 hours. Vance and Ghalibaf in the same room with Pakistani mediators facilitating. And when that round ended, Iran's chief negotiator said something that I think is the single most important sentence spoken in this entire war. He said, and I am giving you his exact words because they matter. Before the negotiations, I emphasized that we have the necessary good faith and will. But due to the experiences of the 2 previous wars, we have no trust in the opposing side. No trust. Not a capability disagreement. Not a red line over centrifuges or enrichment levels. Trust. He is describing a broken relationship, not a broken deal. And that distinction is everything. Think about what Iran has actually experienced in its history with American agreements. The JCPOA was signed in 2015. America tore it up in 2018. In this very war, America announced a ceasefire and then imposed a naval blockade inside that ceasefire window. America's president told reporters that Iran had agreed to everything. Iran's foreign ministry went public calling those claims false. Iran's own foreign minister, Araqchi, said Iran was inches away from a deal before America shifted the goalposts. And then on Sunday, with the ceasefire still technically in effect, the United States fired rounds from a naval gun into the engine room of an Iranian cargo ship, sent Marines rappelling from helicopters onto its deck, and announced the seizure on social media. That ship was heading from China to Iran. Iran's foreign ministry called it proof of America's lack of seriousness in diplomacy. So when you hear pundits say Iran is being stubborn or playing games or acting in bad faith, I want you to hold that against the actual sequence of events and ask yourself whether stubborn is really the right word. There is something else happening inside Iran right now that the coverage is almost entirely missing. The Iran you are watching in these news cycles is not one Iran. It is 2. There is the Iran of Araqchi, the foreign minister, the diplomat who flew to Islamabad for 21 hours, who called the Strait of Hormuz open on Friday, who is still in back-channel contact with Pakistani mediators. That Iran wants to negotiate. It knows the blockade is real. It knows what a resumed bombing campaign looks like. And then there is a completely different Iran, the Iran of the IRGC Hardliners, who overruled Araqchi within hours of his Hormuz announcement, who sent gunboats to fire on tankers the very next day, who framed the Tuska seizure as a reason for retaliation. These 2 Irans are genuinely fighting an internal war about how to handle this moment. And the clearest evidence of that fight is what happened on Monday morning, when Iran's foreign ministry officially said no travel to Pakistan, and a member of Iran's Parliamentary Security Committee told Al Jazeera on the same day that Iran would likely send a team today or tomorrow. 2 statements from inside the same government on the same day, pointing in opposite directions. That is not noise. That is the sound of a government at war with itself. Now let me tell you what China knew before it said nothing. And this is the part that I think almost no one in Western media is explaining correctly. China has been the single most important external actor in this entire conflict, not through military force, not through dramatic declarations, through 3 very specific things it has done quietly and consistently since the first day of this war. The first is economic. Before this war, Iran was exporting approximately 1.68 million barrels of oil per day. During the most intense weeks of the conflict, with Hormuz largely closed and American bombing at its peak, Iran was exporting 1.84 million barrels per day, more than before the war started. Think about that for a moment. A country whose supreme leader was killed, whose nuclear facilities were bombed, whose air defenses were degraded, is exporting more oil during a war than it was before the war. How does that happen? China. Dark fleet tankers with spoofed transponders, flags from landlocked countries, ship-to-ship transfers in Malaysian waters, yuan payments through second-tier Chinese banks operating completely outside the SWIFT network. China's official customs records show 0 imports from Iran. But China's recorded imports of what they call Malaysian crude run to 1.3 million barrels per day, which is more than double Malaysia's entire national oil production. The math does not work unless that oil is coming from somewhere else. Right now, 157.7 million barrels of Iranian crude are at sea. 97.6% of that is heading to China. America's naval blockade was written with language that explicitly excludes vessels heading to non-Iranian ports. That language was written precisely so that Chinese tankers would never need to be stopped. The second thing China has done is diplomatic protection. When America proposed a UN Security Council resolution authorizing force to reopen Hormuz, China vetoed it. Not one country joined America's blockade. Wang Yi made 26 phone calls during this war, with Iran consistently on the list. And the Financial Times confirmed from leaked Iranian documents that the IRGC used satellite imagery from a Chinese commercial firm to target American military bases: Prince Sultan Air Base, Muwafaq Salti Air Base. Positions near the 5th Fleet Naval Base in Bahrain. China helped Iran see where America was, so Iran could hit those places more accurately. The third thing is the most directly relevant to what happened this week. China pressed Iran to open Hormuz last Thursday. Wang Yi called Araqchi. That call produced Friday's announcement that the strait was fully open. Trump posted thank you in capital letters. Oil dropped 9%. And then America kept the blockade on Iranian ports. Iran reimposed Hormuz restrictions. IRGC gunboats fired on tankers Saturday. America seized the Tuska Sunday. The ship originated from China, and China said nothing. China pressed Iran to open Hormuz. Iran opened it. America kept the blockade. Iran closed it again. America seized a Chinese origin ship. China said nothing. Not nothing as in they could not find the right words. Nothing as in a deliberate, calculated decision that silence serves China better than speech right now. And this is the part I want you to sit with, because understanding why China is silent tells you more about the trajectory of this war than any press briefing from any government. Consider what it would actually mean for China to speak. If Wang Yi issues a statement about the Tuska, calling on America to release an Iranian vessel that originated in China, China publicly confirms that the voyage served Chinese strategic interests. That opens the question of what the cargo was and what relationship China maintains with Iran's supply network. If Wang Yi calls Araqchi and presses Iran back to the table a second time, China accepts accountability for whatever Iran does next, including walking away from any deal China helped broker. China does not want that accountability. China wants credit for any eventual deal without accountability for Iran's behavior in the meantime. So China calculates the cost of speaking versus not speaking and chooses silence. And Iran reads that calculation with precision. Our partner has decided our refusal is acceptable. We can afford to stay home. Here is the structural reason this silence serves China so well, and this is something you will not hear in most coverage. If Iran makes a comprehensive agreement, one that ends the war, reopens Hormuz on American terms, includes real nuclear constraints, and results in sanctions relief, Iran becomes less dependent on Chinese buyers. A post-deal Iran with access to Western markets does not need to sell crude at a discount to Chinese refineries. China loses its decade-long position as Iran's sole major customer. America emerges having demonstrated its tools can produce a nuclear deal, and the global energy disruption that has been quietly benefiting China's solar, battery, and electric vehicle exports comes to an end. Al Monitor published a piece with a headline that captures this dynamic precisely. China plays peacemaker while letting America bleed. China calls for peace in every public statement. China buys Iranian oil through every sanction. China presses Iran toward talks when that serves Chinese commercial interests. And when the talks collapse, China says nothing. Because the current state of this war, extended, inconclusive, expensive for America, and profitable for China, is better for China than a clean American victory on American terms. There is one more piece that ties this all together. The Trump-Xi summit in Beijing is scheduled for May 14th. Trump is flying to Beijing. Trade, technology, Taiwan, all of it built around that meeting. Every decision China makes between now and May 14th is being weighed against whether it makes that summit harder or easier. Issuing a formal protest about the Tuska would force Trump to respond publicly to China's interference in his own blockade enforcement. It creates a diplomatic incident before Air Force One even lands. China will not do that, not for a cargo ship. Not even for a cargo ship that originated in China. The summit is worth more than the protest. Now I want to give you the steel man for America's position, because I think you should test this argument rather than just accept it. America's case is that the pressure is working. The blockade turned back 25 ships. Iran's currency, the rial, is down 15%. Iran's central bank has warned of a 12-year recovery timeline. Iran came 80% of the way to a deal in Islamabad. The Lebanon ceasefire removed one of Iran's key preconditions. Araqchi explicitly linked Hormuz to Lebanon. Lebanon got a ceasefire, and the contradiction inside Iran's own government right now, the foreign ministry saying no travel while a parliamentary security official says today or tomorrow, That is not necessarily evidence of chaos. Iran rejected talks publicly before round one and then sent a 70-member delegation to Islamabad. The public rejection may be positioning, not a final decision. Vance flying to Pakistan even after Iran's official refusal is itself a deliberate signal to every mediating country that America is the party that showed up. Pakistan's prime minister has been shuttling between Jeddah, Doha, and Antalya. Pakistan's army chief flew to Tehran and was met on the tarmac with what witnesses described as a genuinely warm embrace from Araqchi. That warmth is not theater. It is a signal that both sides want the channel open. And Trump saying this morning that the concept of the deal is essentially done may reflect genuine back-channel movement. Axios reported that mediators remain confident a framework is reachable. All of that is real. The steel man is coherent. But here is what the steel man cannot answer. Every round of pressure has produced movement up to a point and then stalled, because the point at which Iran cannot absorb more pressure is further out than America's tools can reach. As long as China is buying 157.7 million barrels of Iranian crude through a system specifically designed to be unreachable by American blockades and sanctions, Iran has economic oxygen, not comfort, oxygen, enough to refuse a second round, enough to call the talks a media game, enough to fire gunboats at a tanker on Saturday and seize the moral high ground on Sunday when America responds by taking a ship. America's pressure strategy is trying to squeeze a country that has a lifeline America cannot cut. And the country holding that lifeline decided this week that saying nothing was the right move, which means Iran is reading that silence, and it is reading it as permission. So let me close with 3 specific signals to watch in the next 48 hours, because the sequence of events before Wednesday will tell you more than anything that gets said at a press briefing. Watch whether China says anything specific about the Tuska, not general calls for peace. Not the blockade is dangerous, which is language China has been using for weeks. Something specific about a vessel that originated in China being seized by an American destroyer. If China stays silent on the Tuska specifically, that is China deciding the ambiguity serves it better than the protest, and Iran reads that as a green light to stay home. If China speaks specifically about the Tuska, something crossed a threshold. Watch Wang Yi. His last call to Araqchi was Thursday. If he makes another call before Wednesday, that is China deciding a deal now serves it better than continued limbo. That the ceasefire expiring and bombing resuming creates disruptions in oil markets and in the atmosphere heading toward the May 14th summit that cost China more than the strategic benefits of the current stalemate. If he stays silent through Wednesday, China has decided the current state of this war is preferable to the outcome of a deal on America's current terms. And watch what Iran's actual delegation does, not what its foreign ministry says. If an Iranian team arrives in Islamabad despite the official statement, the diplomatic government inside Iran won the internal argument, and the back channel with Pakistan is producing real results. If no delegation arrives by Tuesday, the Hardliners won, and Trump faces the choice he has been deferring for 52 days. China's last public move was pressing Iran to open Hormuz on Thursday. Since then, America seized a Chinese origin ship. Iran vowed retaliation. The ceasefire expires Wednesday, and China said nothing. If you want to understand where this war is actually going, stop watching what Washington and Tehran are saying. Watch what Beijing is choosing not to say. Because right now, China's nothing is doing more work in this negotiation than anything anyone has said out loud.